All right, it's the full court press, 5 o'clock hour, second hour here on a Friday evening. We get you ready for Utah State, Colorado State Rams, big one at the Spectrum. The last time these two teams met, Queta had a heyday versus one player in particular, Mr. Nico Garvaccio. Now, joining us here on the full court press, one of my favorite dudes, and he's probably done the best gimmick so far of Craig Smith in regards of the bald cap, the movements, the body posture. It was all just extremely Golden Globe, would that be the word? Golden Globe Academy favorites.
Maybe an Oscar-esque.
Richie, my man, how are we?
What's going on, man? So you like that little Craig Smith bit we had?
It was good. I went home and watched the game after we got back, and I was like, man, that's actually so. Like when when it was like, yeah, Richie's in the or Coach Smith is in the crowd. I was like, what is Coach Smith doing? It really looked like you for a second, and I had to pause it, and I was like, oh my hell, it's Richie. You got to be kidding me.
No, that's funny. That's funny. So yeah, we wanted to do something in the student section with the bald cap, but then we wanted to do the little 2-cup bit too. You know, Coach Smith always has 2 cups of water, and so I picked up on that. The SID, Kyle, gave me that information. He says, look, he always has 2 cups. When things are going well, he drinks out of 1 cup, but as soon as things start to turn the corner, he starts to drink out of the other cup. A little superstition. So, we had to do the little 2-cup bit too, and then they did the side-by-side frame, and I thought it looked just like him. I think you're right on point.
Yeah, the body posture was great. The hands on the hip, the standing straight. Now, what we need you to do is run down the sideline, doing your defensive stance both ways, and then stomping really hard on the ground when someone's about to take a 3. Get that in line, and I think you're set.
Oh, man. Well, Coach Smith was all on board with the ball cap, but if I start mocking him on the sideline, he might not appreciate it as much.
Mocking him, it's him. There's nothing mocking about it.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
You make a good point. Yes, it is the highest form of flattery.
Richie, you've seen this Utah State team on an absolute roller coaster, to say the least. After blowing an 18-point lead in about a 4-minute span to Boise State and falling at Extra Mile Arena, they turn around and come to the Spectrum and take care of Air Force 72-47. What was the biggest difference you saw in between those two games?
Well, I think they just finished. And that was a big theme for them. Finishing is what Coach Smith said. They just kept talking about it all weekend. And I'll tell you this, for them to have that colossal collapse they had at Boise State, and then for them to turn around and have a completely set of different attitudes going into that game. I mean, they looked great in shoot-around. They looked confident going into the game. They just looked outstanding. But anytime they got a lead, they got like a 20-point lead at some point, and I told my play-by-play partner, Eric Rothman, I said, hey, don't get too comfortable. There's still like 10 minutes to go. We saw them lose that 18-point lead with about 3.5. But I think that Coach Smith has done an outstanding job of not letting them just collapse for the season. Right? When something like that happens, you're extremely vulnerable. Your confidence is shot. And in their case, they had lost 3 straight. Then they got back on track with Nevada, and it looked like they were going to do the same with Boise State and just keep a little win streak going, and it didn't happen. So I give Coach Smith a lot of credit and his staff for not letting them fall into a deep, depressed funk as a team. They were exactly the opposite in this game the other night, and I expect them to continue that into Colorado State, playing Colorado State tomorrow.
Richie, for this team, injuries have been well noted. Is it something mental? Because I feel like even that answer wouldn't be right, because they've played tough opponents throughout the season. What do you attribute the hiccups to?
I think part of it is, I know they brought 6 of their top 7 players back, and they got a lot of the same base starters, but it is a little bit of a different team from last year. And I think part of it is, early on, before Queta came back, they really had no back to the basket post threat with size. Maybe Anderson could do that a little bit, but when Karvovsky was playing big minutes, he really wasn't a back-to-the-basket guy. So they were really perimeter-oriented, 4-around-1 on the offensive end. But, their one down inside was coming out setting ball screens and back screens and whatnot. So it was a little bit of a different feel. Now you mix in Queta, and now you have a back-to-the-basket player. And that changes your style of play. And it just takes some time to get used to that. So I think that's part of it. But then, you noted the injuries. Justin Bean, Sam Merrill both had some ankle injuries. They weren't the same. Just before the Boise State game, I think they had a week off. And I think it allowed those 2 guys, and maybe even Abel Porter, I think he's had like an ailing back for a while. I think it allowed those guys to heal, and not just physically, but also as a team, figuring each other out more so on the floor, having some chemistry within each other. Because, Queta's a great player. When he's missing, things are different, although they played pretty well for a while without him. But, now that he's back, you got to mix him back in, and you've got to figure out a way to play a whole nother style of play. And, in the end, I think it's better, right? Because Queta's such a great player, but in the beginning, you're going through some growing pains. And that loss at Boise State, I really believe that loss will make them better throughout the course of season. I mean, that's not going to happen again. That was a very rare thing to happen, and I think they'll close out games from here on out.
I want to ask you about Queta. It looked like on against Air Force, he was actually fully back. You saw him dive on the floor, a couple of big dunks, getting up on for rebounds. I mean, he was able to get up and block shots as well. Was that, you covered Utah State extremely well this year, was that the most you've seen Queta of the 2018-19 version of him?
Absolutely. When they played at Air Force, he was different. He was very slow to get off the floor. He was very slow to react. And, as a coach, you're always saying, hey, your mental quickness makes you physically quick. Well, Queta Queta was like in preseason shape a month ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't in game shape. He was just trying to get back into it. And you think slower. Everything that happens, you think. It's not reacting, you're thinking. And when you're thinking as a player, the athleticism is taken out of you. And so now that he's getting back in the swing of things, he looked really good against Air Force. I mean, still not his best. I think he can be a lot better, but he looked quick. He looked quick off the floor. He had the fast twitch muscles. Offensively, I remember him, I think he went baseline twice off a drop step. One time they called it travel. And I think 3 times he went to the middle with a little hook shot. And even once or twice he even faced up inside, like got the ball in the post, turned around and faced the basket and attacked. And he just looked more confident. And he looked like the player that you saw last year, but bigger and stronger. I think he put on, 20, 25 pounds?
Yeah.
Look at his numbers. Well, he's 1 for 1 from threes now. He's 100%, right? But from free throws, he's gone up 18, 19% in free throw percentage from last year at 56%, and now I think he's like a 73, 74%. So he has certainly made the most of sitting out and just having nothing better to do than shoot.
With him healthy, what are the odds you give? What are the chances you give the Aggies at San Diego State? Because they're going to have that one marked down. They played a pretty good game against him in the Spectrum, but obviously it's well noted they're still trying to figure out their team, trying to get healthy, and that one's got to be a big one for the end of the Mountain West Conference play.
Well, I think that San Diego State they're outstanding, right? I mean, they're 20-0.
Absolutely.
Third time in their school history. I mean, they're terrific. By the way, the previous 2 times they made the Sweet 16. So,
little bracket tip for you there.
Yeah, there you go, man. Right now, Joe Lenardi's got him at his number 1 seed. So, but they are vulnerable, and things have changed for them. They've been without Nathan Mensah, big, tall man. I think he's from Ghana. I think he's close to 6'10", 7 foot, really long arms, rim protector, and rebounder. And they've been without him for I think maybe 9 games now. And I'm not sure he's coming back. I think he's having some issues. So not nothing. I mean, it's health related. He's having some health related issues that I don't think they really put out there too much. But I'm not sure he's coming back. And so what they've done is they've taken their Vanderbilt transfer, who's a big 7-footer or 6'10" kid, and they've made him into a 5, who normally plays a 4. So they've had to change their way of play, and that can take other teams by surprise. But now that that's been happening and going for a while, people are going to learn how to play against that. I said during the broadcast, I was talking to Eric Rothman, and he asked me, he goes, of all the teams in the Mountain West, which team do you feel like is going to be having the best shot of beating San Diego State come conference tournament time? And I went through all the teams. I mean, UNLV is playing terrific under Coach Altenberger up there, first-year coach. Colorado State is really trending up, and Nevada's good, and Boise, and blah, blah, blah. But in my opinion, Utah State has the best team and the best roster to do so. No question in my mind, I don't think Utah State's going to win the regular season championship. I mean, what are they, 4-4? But there's no doubt that they're continuing to peak. I think they had their dark time, and now they got their pieces. And as long as everybody stays healthy, I mean, they're going to keep peaking. San Diego State may have peaked already. Utah State's going to keep getting better. And there's no doubt in my mind that they could beat San Diego State now that they're getting all together. And there's no doubt in my mind that they can win the conference tournament championship. So your hometown team, still may very well be conference champions at the end of this thing.
I want to get into the Mountain West as a whole more in just a bit, but I got to ask you, tomorrow night, you are calling or at least part of the broadcast for the Utah State-Colorado State game at the Spectrum, 8 o'clock, another late tip-off. I'm getting sick of these. But
Right.
the last year they faced each other, Queta had a heyday, 8 of 11 from the field in 36 minutes. He had 18 points, 11 rebounds, 10 of those were defensive. He had the one offensive rebound. And on the other side, Nico Carvacho, he was, I wouldn't say more down, but it was a quiet night for him, 5 of 8 from the field, 12 points, 10 boards. How much do you look forward to this matchup? And do you feel like Carvacho has improved from last year to this year, and how?
Well, those are great questions. Carvacho, here's the biggest differences between Queta and Carvacho. Carvacho is obviously an amazing rebounder, best of all time in the Mountain West Conference. But he's not going to be, a guy that's jumping out of the gym. He's not a superb athlete, and you look at Queta and you see how long he is and his leaping ability and his quickness. He has that on Carvacho. I think Queta plays more of like a power style, and he's pretty good with his footwork and things. Carvacho's good with his footwork too, but he's not as long, and I just don't think Carvacho has like those fast twitch muscles and whatnot to block shots like Queta does. One great thing I love about Carvacho is every time you see him rebound the basketball, I mean, he just has a nose for the ball. He's tenacious, has unbelievable hands, but watch him when he goes to rebound. He always goes and gets the ball with two hands. And his first coach there, Larry Eustace, 3 years ago, told me he thought for sure Carvacho would be in the NBA. I don't personally see it. I think Queta is the NBA prospect of the two. But anytime you have a person that can rebound, oftentimes that translates to the next level. An NBA scout told me that once. He goes, rebounding is something that always translates to the next level. It's all other qualities, rebounding. But those two head-to-head, I think Carvacho is going to have a hard time. I mean, Queta's bigger. Maybe they weigh about the same. Queta's probably a little more now. But Queta's an inch or two taller. I think he's more quicker and more athletic than Carvacho. But I just think that Carvacho, I'm most curious to see who's going to win that rebounding battle. You know what I mean? Who's going to win that rebounding battle? And I think Carvacho's footwork's a little bit better than it was a year ago. You asked how he had improved. I still think he has great hands and great anticipation. One thing both those guys have, they both have amazing vision inside the post. They're both really good passers out of the post. So, if one team elects to double down, they almost always find the right player that leads to a good shot.
I want to ask you about Colorado State as a whole. This team's trending upward, as you already mentioned earlier. What is different about Colorado State, say, before, I guess, the first half of the season?
Well, they're young. They're young and old. They got 4 freshmen that get some serious playing time, and they have 3 seniors that get a lot of playing time. So those 4 freshman players that they have, and one is a point guard, Isaiah Stevens, they're terrific. Isaiah Stevens is good. He's a good three-point shooter. He may be their best player. He leads the team. And anytime you go from a senior in high school to a freshman in college at Division I, it is a major jump. The speed of the game is incredibly faster at the Division I level, and that's all. It's hard because remember we talked about Queta coming back into play. He's thinking too much in the beginning, right? So it slows down his athleticism. Same thing happens with every freshman. But then you give a player like Isaiah Stevens, the point guard, the hardest job on the floor, and he's still adjusted. I mean, he's like 12, 13 a game, 4 or 5 assists, and he's been great. And then they got another freshman, David Roddy. There's a 4-man, 6'5", 250. Some people say he's, could be freshman of the year. He's like 14-7 in the conference. And they just have some other good players surrounding them. But I just think that those freshmen are starting to figure it out. First of all, Nico Medved is like they're on the level of Craig Smith. I mean, they're just terrific coaches. They know how to coach. They've been experienced coaches before they came here as head coaches. And, Colorado State, they did have 9 non-conference wins. I think that's their best in like 5-6 years. But I just feel like these freshmen they have are figuring it out, and they're getting better each and every day, and that's making a major impact on the success of their program this year.
Looking at the Mountain West as a whole, you already mentioned how San Diego State right now in bracketology is predicted as a 1 seed. How many bids do you think the Mountain West is going to get? And I guess how important on top of that are those potential rematches USU could have with San Diego State for their own bracket hopes?
I think it's going to be extremely difficult for Utah State to get an at-large unless they win out, and maybe they have one or two hiccups. But I think they've got to finish, 13-3, 14-4 in league. To be honest with you, to get that. Now they do have some good wins. They beat LSU, they beat Florida, and I could go down the list. They beat some really good teams, but I just think as of late, they're out of that conversation right now. Could they get back in there? Of course they could. But they've got to finish strong. I mean, they got to get at least, I think 23, 24 wins. It's just my guess. Now I have no bracketologist, but it just from my feel and just from conversing with other people who have talked about it, that's kind of their feel as well. But if San Diego State wins the conference tournament, I'm not convinced Mountain West will have more than one. Now, if Utah State, does what we just talked about, possibly they got to get back in that conversation. They're not there now. But I'm not convinced San Diego State's going to win the conference tournament. Do I think San Diego State's going to get an at-large bid? Yeah, I do. But I'm not convinced they're going to win the conference tournament because everybody's peaking at that time, and it's hard to stay on top. I mean, think about San Diego State. They haven't lost a game since last March.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 10.5 months since they lost a game. It's hard to keep that. So by season's end, when they continue to play games and whatnot, every other team is continuing to improve. And teams like Utah State that are well coached, they peak at the right time. They just continue getting better every week of the season.
Richie Schueler of ESPN joins us here on the Full Court Press. Richie will be the analyst on the ESPN broadcast tomorrow. He's Craig Smith's twin, long-lost twin, doppelganger, whatever you want to call it. Hey, by the way, I got to ask you, did Sam ask for any of your nachos or anything? Because that guy, and did you actually oblige? Because that guy was on a roll versus Air Force. So did you finally learn your lesson? Is that what happened?
Because you're making fun of me because of San Jose State. I didn't give him my chili dog.
Yeah, nachos, chili dog, whatever it is. Did you finally actually give in and help?
Pants mid-game. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so you know what? Sam is always cordial. He's great. He's always said hello, and he kind of nods his head at me when he sees me. But since I didn't give him the chili dog, he really hasn't talked to me as much. I don't know if he's just like upset. Is he hurt by that or what? I don't know. But no, honestly, I think they've a lot of their players have tried to change their approach because things have not been going so well. So they're trying to stay a little more focused, stay away from the media. But Sam's always polite. And Justin Bean's always coming up and shaking my hand. I like that kid. But hey, can I ask you guys a question?
Shoot.
What's up with Jello in Utah? I'm just learning about this.
Jello is what funeral potatoes are to Utah, as is Jello. Fry sauce, Jello,
Way to
potatoes.
use an example that's solely only Utah.
Well, that's the only things I can think about, man.
As someone who's not from the state, I'm with you. I don't get the supreme love fest either.
It's kind of weird, but I like it. It's so much that I think I'm going to eat Jello on air tomorrow night.
Do it. Oh, my gosh. Do it. Now,
put fruit in it,
I would request you put some whipped cream in it and you make it green Jello. If you want the delectable taste of grandeur heaven in Jello, you'll have green Jello with whipped cream, and then you will give me credit for this because you will be in love with it.
So yeah, you're weirdly obsessed with this too. It sounds like.
Well, I'm from Utah, so yes,
Certainly
absolutely.
like it.
You got it.
I'm just playing. No, that's great. All right, well, I'm going to have to see what we can do. I'm going to talk to the producer about this. Let
me know if you need any help. I know the best Jello places to go.
Hey, can I get some to go so I can bring it to the game?
Yeah, absolutely. You kidding me? Just let me know where you're at.
I get the hookup.
I'll bring you some Jello salad. Oh, my gosh, you're going to love it. Oh, you'll be so in love. Jello salad is the way to go.
I'm going to hit you up later. I got to get me some Jello.
Hey, Rich, I got to ask you, what's your biggest surprise so far of the Mountain West season so far, and what's your biggest disappointment?
Can they be the same?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I mean, somebody asked me this on a show a couple weeks ago, or a week or two ago, and I said, they said the biggest surprise. That's all they asked me, and I said, Utah State. I'm surprised they had that hiccup that they lost 3 in a row, then 4 or 5. But when you peel off a few layers of the onion, you see why. I mean, there's injury issues. There's trying to mix in a great player. They're trying to do things different. So that just happens. I'll say that's my biggest surprise, Utah State. But I think they're going to get that turned around. I do think that they could still win that conference tournament. They're going to be right there. Here's my biggest disappointment. The New Mexico Lobos. To start out whatever they were, like 14-2 or whatever, 15-2 or whatever they were. and then to have two guys get removed from the team for off-the-court issues. And that's disappointing to me because they had a team. They had a squad. They were loaded with talent. And now they're completely different. And I did the game at Colorado State a week ago when New Mexico was there. And Colorado State hit 19 threes on them, and they looked dead in the water. But you can't do much about 19 threes. But just their body language going into warm-ups was right after the second player got kicked off the team within a week. And I could tell, I mean, these guys are going to get smashed tonight. And they did. Lost by like 30, Colorado State. So it's just disappointing to me that they had such a great squad. I do like their coach, Paul Weir. They got a great staff, and then that happens, and I feel bad for them. But I guess you could say that's what happens when you take guys with questionable character.
Yeah, good point.
On the subject of players and punishment, have anything to your mind stand out as bad as that Kansas State brawl in recent history? Because, I mean, you're talking some serious suspensions for teams.
You know, and that's I can't think of anything in recent. You know what? I'm from Cincinnati, so the crosstown shootout's a big deal in Cincinnati every year. It's the Xavier versus Cincinnati game, and Xavier's got the best of them over the last decade. But it's they had a brawl maybe 10 years ago that was
that's right.
similar, where they didn't have the game for like 2 years.
Yeah,
which was a big deal in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and you know, I haven't lived there in forever, but you know, I still follow. So, but I don't know. That one was pretty bad. I haven't seen a guy pick up a chair before.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The thing is, like, both benches got ejected in that game because they both ran off the floor. Evidently, the ref said there was 1 second left in the game, so they could be ejected. And I don't know what's going to happen, and that's disappointing too because Kansas was 5-1 on the way to another conference championship, and then that happens. So, yeah, I hate that. You know, and you got to understand too. We're talking about 18 to 23-year-olds, and all of us did stupid stuff. Now maybe we didn't get in fights, but we all did stupid stuff between 18 and 23. You're not always thinking
totally
appropriately. So you know, you got to think. You know, you got to forgive some of these guys for their actions, and they're probably going to be embarrassed about it down the road if they're not already. But it's just disappointing that, you know, teams are having great years, and then boom, these kind of things happen.
Would you go as far go on record and say Kansas absolutely won't win the Big 12? Because, I mean, you've got, Baylor, West Virginia, Texas Tech. I mean, it's a pretty good conference this year, and Baylor's obviously sitting at number 1 right now.
You know, I wouldn't say that there's no chance because I don't know how Bill Self did it for whatever it was, 13, 14 years.
Fair.
I mean, he's had roster issues in the past, and he still finds a way. I mean, say what you want about Bill Self and say what you want about the FBI investigation, but he does something with those players. You know what I mean? Like the old John Wooden quote, you got to have talent to win, but just because you have talent doesn't mean you're going to win. And he still wins with that talent. You know what I mean? And that's you know, so he's getting it done, and he's doing a great job of coaching who he has, and he always has. He's been extremely successful, winning a lot of conference championships on the way.
Richie, that's great stuff. Thank you so much for your time. We know you got to get ready for this Utah State Colorado State game, so we wish you the best at the game. And again, let me know when you want any of that Jello green salad to specialty.
Man, I don't know. Yeah, I got to figure. I don't even know what a Jello green salad is. I just want some Jello by itself.
See, that's what normal people want outside of Utah.
That's boring,
just regular
man.
Jello.
Whipped cream and Jello salad.
Regular Jello.
Yeah.
Don't put things in my Jello.
Yeah, I don't want pineapple in there. You know, I just want a spoonful of clear liquid, whatever that is. Solid
Listen to
liquid.
the man.
What is Jello?
You are not a hard guy to please. I'm just telling you, it will change your life. Promise you.
All right.
Hey, Richie, thanks for your time. Really appreciate you, man.
Thanks,
Be
Richie.
safe.
All right, man. Thanks, guys.
All
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.